So after being recalled from India back to the States, I was put on mostly my first bases were on the East Coast, and I would fly the Atlantic run, and they were ferrying planes or passengers.
What about Greenland? Weren't you
Where?
at Greenland? Didn't you stop off at Greenland?
Yes, I did. Greenland and Iceland, I was up there. But about the flying itself, it was over water flying, and that's what I had been trained for, and that's where I spent the rest of the war, flying over over water. There was no more land flight except flying out of the United States. And I was ferrying, it was a B-25, which I loved the B-25 because it had a transparent nose, and I could sit in the nose and look down with nothing to obstruct my view. It was a wonderful thing to do.
Wow.
And I was ferrying a B-25 to the South Pacific, that's where they were based, and I don't know where they went from there, but we would land maybe in New Guinea or Java or somewhere in there, and leave the plane and then take however we could get back. On the way, of course, we had crossed the Pacific to get there, and so we did island hopping. We went, of course, from California to Hawaii. And we landed, I don't remember if we landed at Hickam or not, but we landed at a base in Hawaii, and then we'd fly south. Of course, we would go across, most of the islands in the Pacific are in the South Pacific, so we would fly south to maybe Johnson Island, Palmyra, or something like that, and then go westward through, hit a lot of islands en route. Not that the ocean looked full of islands, though, when you wanted to find one. It was a tough proposition. But we would go from island to island. As a normal flight might be anywhere from 3 to 5 hours of flying. And we didn't fly very fast because we loaded with gasoline, and they flew to conserve gasoline, which means flying at low speed. We were headed toward an island. I cannot remember the name for sure. But this island, there were two types of islands in the Pacific. One were coral reefs. They were really simply a heap of coral growth that would grow up, and and for some reason, they weren't shaped like a mound or a mountain, but they were sunken in the middle. So you'd have a circular island with a lagoon inside. The lagoon was seawater that had been trapped, but it was very peaceful in the lagoon. And of course, fish were trapped there, so there was fishing, and it was very nice in the lagoon. And usually most of those places, they had pretty good food, I must say. And one of the things about flying in a flyer is you can never fly more than a few hours before you're near a mess hall. So and some of the places had bad food, but they all had beer. The first thing, and they had whiskey too at the bars. They all had officers' clubs. So the first thing we do is head to the club and then take a nap. No, we'd take a nap first, or get showered. It was, and then head for the club. But anyway, that's a digression, because what I'm trying to think of is this island that had, it was an island that was one of the mountain islands. I said there were coral reefs, and then there were the tops of underwater mountains that were islands, but they were mountainous, and usually there was some type of shelf near the shore where they could have an airstrip. But unfortunately, this airstrip was always close to the mountain, parallel to the mountain where they had cut it, and so you had to be careful. But if you came in bad weather, it was a little sticky. And this time we were coming in and there was a horrendous storm. It was so, I mean, we were flying very low because I knew we were close to the island, but I didn't know quite where we were. I had my best guess from dead reckoning because we had no way to orient ourselves as a real firm checkpoint. And so we were headed to this island. The island we knew to have mountains down to the coast and a rather narrow strip of safe landing area and an airstrip near the coast. But the visibility was zero. However, so we flew very low until we got down where we would see anything that could be seen, but there was a cloud deck underneath us at low altitude. And things looked kind of, not hopeless, but very, very scary. And at a certain point, I glanced down, and there were breaks in the clouds below us occasionally. And there was a break in the cloud, and there was a big, smooth-looking rock. I don't know, I can't tell you the dimensions. I had no way of knowing quite the dimensions, but I would guess it was certainly not more than 1/4 of a mile long. I think much shorter than that. But it was a big rock. And I looked at the map, and sure enough, there was a little diagram of a rock off this island on my map, and that looked like it matched. So I made a quick calculation, and I told the pilot, go, let's say 277 degrees, and hold it for 1.5 minutes. And he did this, and then I said, turn so-and-so degrees to the left, a 90-degree turn. And I said, okay, it should be there. And there it was. He was over the end of the runway. It was the most amazing thing. It was not an amazing feat of navigation. It was just an amazing feat of luck. Because without that rock, you see, you can't make too big an error when you have a short distance. Let's say you know where you are, and you have 2 miles to go. You can't be very far off at the end of that 2 miles.
Right.
And you can't be very far off in how much time it'll take you, because you have a fairly decent idea of your speed. So this was very accurate.
Wasn't there a plane that had crashed?
It was the B-25.
Wasn't there a plane that had crashed?
Oh yes, the B-25 in front of us had made it too, but he hadn't quite made it all the way, and he crashed off the runway. I don't know, I don't remember. I think it was off to the side of the runway he had gone, and he was. There were no deaths on that plane, but I remember the pilot jumping out of the plane and coming over and hugging me. Because he knew that because he had no idea of where he was. So I was like God coming in and telling him what to do. Thou shalt turn. And God him in. It looked much better, much more skillful than it was.
Yeah. You were the only thing he could depend on. I mean, that was the only
Yes,
lead.
oh yes.
The only lead that he had.
He was, and lots of pilots were not that in awe of the navigator. They thought they could navigate without the navigator because they all did most of their flying in the States. And there you had railroads and churches and cities and rivers. You had all sorts of checkpoints. You could do what they call a it wasn't dead reckoning, it was piloting. Pilotage, I think, was the name of that type of navigation. Pilotage. I'm not sure of that term, though, anymore. But they all used that, and so they figured, well, there's nothing to navigating, until they got over water.
Yeah.
In the middle of
all
an ocean.
the water looks the same.
Yeah.
Except for the rock.
So I guess that finishes it, Howard.
All right.